Another new thing, well, it's not new, but we've done some updates, is our written safety program templates. So we've always had those templates. We're just kind of going through those as we have a little bit of downtime. We're going through and we're updating those and bringing them more current. So those are also on our website, and then as well as our safety talks. So if you use safety talks, or for you all in construction, you may call them toolbox talks. We've updated a lot of those as well, and those are also on our website. So from the Bureau standpoint, safety and hygiene, that's all I got. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate those updates. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Patrick Nelson. Patrick gained both local and national accolades for his military service, academic career, and work as a professional speaker and trainer, including being named the inaugural NFL Tillman Military Scholar. He's an experienced leader has spent nearly 7 years in the U.S. Army as a paratrooper, completed 3 combat deployments, leading soldiers. His military awards include the Bronze Star Medal and the Purple Heart Medal. Patrick is an engaging facilitator, has led leadership development programs for a variety of clients, for Fortune 500 clients to small businesses across a variety of industries. Off the proverbial leadership field, he serves his community by actively volunteering with Tee It Up for the Troops, a nonprofit organization that raises money for wounded veterans. Patrick studied at Minnesota State University, received a bachelor's degree, graduating magna cum laude. He also has a master's degree in sports management from Minnesota State and a master's in organization development from Pepperdine University. So let's welcome Patrick Nelson.
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate it. Hey, everybody. It's really an honor for me to be here. Some of you may have seen me speak at the Safety Congress and Expo last year that went virtual, as they mentioned. I really have a special place for your guys, for the state of Ohio in my heart, and the opportunities that came from that. And I just want to say thank you to Steve Penrod for being able to put me in touch with Lori and bringing me in to speak here today and to share my story with all of you. I encourage you, please use the chat function as often as you'd like. I'm going to throw some questions out there. I know what it's like to be on the other side of the screen where somebody's going to come and click through a bunch of PowerPoint slides. I'm very empathetic towards that. So I got a couple different engaging things where you might move around. Nothing that's going to be too strenuous for you. And if you want to make it fun, anytime I reference COVID or Corona, just make sure you take a drink of whatever you have next to you, coffee, water, whatever. No, but I promise I'm not going to dive too much into that. And I'm going to be sharing my screen with the slides, but I'm also going to be pulling it down again. So you're not staring at the slides all the time and just me in a little postage stamp window. I want you to be able to see me and be able to interact with me. What I'm going to share with you this morning really has its origin in my military experience. And that's where I really had the honor and great opportunity to serve with a diverse group of soldiers, literally people from all over the world, different walks of life, representing different nations and races. And it's really been those unique experiences that I had that have helped provide me the opportunity to be here. And I just want to share some of my stories from my military experience with you. And it might feel far away, but there really are many similarities. And I want to share one story in particular with you that really has just changed my life forever. So I just want to make sure everybody can see the slides. I just pulled them up. So on June 8th, 2005, I was operating with our platoon out of a small forward operating base near the Pakistani border at a place called Fob Shkian. Now, this was one of those places where you were short on everything except the enemy. And we served as fire support for a special forces team and some Navy SEALs that were operating in the area. And so this particular morning, we had a Chinook helicopter coming in to resupply us with some new ammunition. So a Chinook helicopter is one of those with the big double rotor blades. And anytime that we would have a resupply or any type of helicopter come in, one of the gun sections was designated as a hot gun. So they'd stay back, monitor the radio, and be prepared to respond in case we got attacked, while the other was responsible for unloading the helicopter. On this particular day, I was going to backfill a position at the other section. They had a sergeant leaving to go on R&R. And so as soon as I heard the helicopter coming in, I hopped in a Humvee with my good buddy Luke, but then my soldier Emmanuel hopping in the back. Now, he wasn't supposed to be there because he was supposed to be back with our section. Again, I was just backfilling a position. So I turned around and I was about to yell at him, but I thought just for a second, you know what? I value that kind of work ethic. Our section will be fine without him. He's volunteering to come lift some heavy boxes in the hot sun. Like, that's what I expect out of my soldiers. So I didn't say anything. But just as I was about to turn around, I noticed he didn't have his helmet on. And so I literally opened my mouth, but then I realized I don't have mine on either. It's kind of hard for me to say something if I'm not doing the right thing. And so I didn't. And so as the helicopter landed, a group of 10 of us stepped to the side of the aircraft so they could remove the machine gun from that back ramp. And we couldn't hear each other. The helicopter, the rotor blades were still turning. And my platoon sergeant handed me a piece of paper with some serial numbers to some items that we were expecting, basically telling me it was my responsibility to make sure I got those items off of the helicopter. And so I grabbed that piece of paper from him and I turned my back to the group so I could start ground guiding my buddy Luke, in the Humvee, so I could get him a little bit closer to the back of the helicopter. And the next thing that I remember, it was everything went dark for a second. And I was laying on the ground. I was disoriented, not able to hear. And my first thought was maybe somebody was playing a joke and had just, kind of come hit me on the back of the head and maybe went too far, or maybe the engine exploded on the helicopter. And I looked up and there were just bodies and blood all over the ground. And the helicopter had quickly powered down. My hearing came back and I heard that very distinct sound, that distinct whistle of an incoming 107 millimeter rocket. So I got up and I dove underneath the Humvee for cover. And as rockets impacted all around, I quickly realized it was a rocket that landed next to us and had knocked me down. And so as the barrage ended, I crawled out from underneath the Humvee and started making my way back to the soldiers who were still on the ground, unsure of what I was going to find. And as I was doing that, a Marine that was on our base training some Afghan National Army soldiers had yelled to me that I'd been hit. Up until that point, I hadn't felt any pain, but I turned my head and I looked at the back of my uniform and it was shredded and blood was starting to pour out. And it was at that moment that the pain really hit me. And just like we trained for, the other soldiers quickly triaged those of us that were wounded, loaded us into whatever type of vehicle they could find, and they brought us into this small clinic. It was an Afghan clinic ran by an Afghan doctor that was within our base. And now my wounds were very, very minor compared to everyone else. I was peppered with shrapnel, a few small holes in my back, nothing too serious, but it definitely hurt. There was definitely a lot of pain. And I was quickly bandaged up by Luke. And as the others were being treated, I saw Sergeant Michael Kelly laying on this elevated stretcher off the ground. And the local Afghan doctor who worked in that clinic, he was like 5 feet 2 inches. He's standing on this red milk crate and he's performing CPR. And I did a quick lap around the clinic to see who else was hurt. And that's where I saw my platoon sergeant, the one who had just handed me the piece of paper prior to the explosion. He was laying on the ground on a stretcher. You can actually see my buddy Landon holding his IV bag. He was laying on the ground on a stretcher. The femoral artery in his leg was severed, tourniquet on his leg, other severe wounds to his abdomen. And it couldn't have been more than like 45 seconds that I was sort of walking around, and I came back, and by then they had lowered Michael onto the ground and they were zipping him up into a body bag. And I found my way back into a small room in the clinic, and that's where I saw my soldier Emmanuel laying on a table. His head was bandaged up, he was unconscious. A couple people were working on him, but I could see that he was breathing. His chest was rising and falling. And so I grabbed his hand and I said, "Hey man, everything's going to be okay. They're going to take care of us." And medevac helicopters arrived shortly after. They flew those of us that were hurt to forward surgical teams spread throughout Afghanistan. And I was on a helicopter with my platoon sergeant. He had lost consciousness. Things weren't looking too good for him. But thanks to the quick thinking of the soldiers on the ground and the surgical team, he did survive. He did not lose his leg. It was an absolute miracle. And at that forward surgical team, they removed several pieces of shrapnel from my back. They left a few souvenirs in there for me that I still carry with me because they were too deep. Patched me up, stitched me up, sent me back out to the landing zone to get on another helicopter ride to Bagram Airfield for some further medical care. And as I was waiting there, my commander approached to see how I was doing. I told him I was going to be fine. And I asked him about Emmanuel. And, to my relief, he said he was going to be okay. And I just felt like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. And he turned to walk away, and he got about 4 or 5 steps. And he turned around, and tears were coming down his cheeks. And he said, "I'm sorry that I lied to you. Hernandez didn't make it." My knees got weak, and I hit the ground as my commander embraced me. Emmanuel took shrapnel through his head, and he died on the helicopter flight. And he died because I wasn't doing the right thing, because I didn't have the courage to speak up and say something. But guess what? We've done it like that hundreds of times before, and nothing has ever happened. And you always think it won't happen to you. And it's that old cliche of that 1 in a million chance. It can and eventually will happen to you. You might have some lucky days, but if you work in industry where safety and risks present themselves, you're not going to have a lucky career. Sooner or later, something's going to happen. Now, I would imagine many of you at one point in your life, you've bought a lottery ticket, right? Like the Powerball or Mega Millions. I've done it. We bought that ticket knowing that the chances of us winning were astronomical, like slim to none in a slim left town. But we had that tiny sliver of belief that just maybe it could be us. Well, let me tell you, if we have that attitude towards winning a lottery jackpot, that it can happen to us, we better have that attitude towards safety and understand that it can happen to us, because the chances of us getting hurt at work are much higher than us winning the lottery jackpot. So we have to be prepared, and we have to be proactive. And I beat myself up for years and years following that incident. I tried to drink the problem away. I tried to wash it away with pills. And of course, none of that worked. It only served as an accelerant to other challenges I was already dealing with. And I obviously can't change the past, but what I've learned is that I can take that story and I can inspire and influence others with it. Now, I'm what I like to call an accidental leader, because I definitely did not have the upbringing to be leading soldiers in combat. In fact, before I was born, the deck was stacked against me. My mother was 19, unemployed, single, living off government assistance. I never knew my biological father till 4 years ago, which in and of itself is such an interesting story, and he's a wonderful man. He didn't know that I existed. But the statistics showed that I was twice as likely to drop out of school, more likely to end up in jail, higher chance of drug and alcohol problem. People didn't look at me when I was growing up and say, "Man, that kid's going to go do some great things someday. He is a natural leader." My mother ended up having 2 more kids and then got married to a guy that had 2 kids of his own and a substance abuse problem. So growing up, I saw drugs in the house. One day I came out of school. My mother's getting arrested, put in the back of a cop car. My stepsister committed suicide in rehab. I ran away from home, took my parents to court because I didn't want to live with them. It was a pretty crappy childhood. But don't get me wrong, because it could have been worse. And some of you might even be able to relate to the challenges that I faced. I barely graduated high school. When I mean barely, I mean barely. And I stumbled my way into a small junior college in West Central Minnesota. And I didn't have the type of family that, took me on college visits or even helped me fill out financial aid forms or applications. I really had no direction in life. And I was already skipping classes the first week. As far as college was considered, I think it's safe to say I was headed nowhere pretty fast. I would imagine most of you here that are old enough remember exactly where you were on 9/11. So I was in the third week of my first semester at that small community college. And as I watched on TV, just like many of you, I felt those same feelings: helplessness, sorrow, anger. So 2 days after the attacks, I dropped out of college and I joined the Army. Now that there, I like to say, is the man my wife married, because that was about 35 pounds ago. I am a little softer on the edges these days, but I went on to serve as a paratrooper in the historic 173rd Airborne Brigade based out of Vicenza, Italy, for 6 years, 10 months, and 22 days. Not that I counted or anything, but somewhere close to that. And I ended up deploying. I went to Iraq for 12 months during the initial invasion. I went to Afghanistan for 12 months. That was the tour where I was wounded. And I just loved it all so much. I went back to Afghanistan for 15 months on my last tour. And after my last deployment, the Army gave me the opportunity to sort of get off the line for a little while and go train new lieutenants in Oklahoma. And nothing against lieutenants or the great state of Oklahoma. I had absolutely zero desire to do that. I was ready for a new challenge and got out of the Army. So I left the Army in December, and in January, I'm sitting in a college classroom with a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids. Their biggest worry was, who's going to buy their beer that night? Where's the party? I was 26 at the time and definitely felt like the old man on campus. However, in hindsight, 26 is still really young. And the next summer, I got my first job outside the military. I was hired as a marketing intern at the Minnesota Vikings training camp. One of my majors was sport management, and the Vikings held training camp where I went to college. It was a great opportunity for me, and I will never, ever forget that first day, because the person in charge of all the interns was another intern. Is a 21-year-old kid with a clipboard, and he's going around letting everybody know what they're going to be doing that day. And he gets to me and he says, "Patrick, you are going to be working at the inflatable bounce house today, all day." I mean, could you imagine? I had left the military as a staff sergeant, the highest rank that I could possibly achieve based on the amount of time that I had served. And I'm watching kids in the bounce house. I had a Bronze Star, Purple Heart, first ever NFL Tillman Military Scholar, leading soldiers in combat. And that's what I was relegated to. It was definitely not what I expected. And I could feel that sort of physiological reaction my body was having. These people had no idea the value that I could add. But thankfully, one of the most important things I learned in the military is how to control my reactions and to use more of a thoughtful and learned response instead. I had a vision of working in professional sports. And if I would have let my internal feelings manifest into behaviors and actions, there's no way that was going to come true. Now, how many of you have ever been in a similar situation where something might just push your buttons and you sort of have to fight off that oftentimes emotionally driven reaction and use a more thought out response instead? Now, how many of you have ever failed at that? Me, a lot. But there's a great analogy that was first described in this book called the happiness hypothesis when it comes to reaction and response. And it's called the elephant in the rider. So this elephant, this big, beautiful, majestic animal, represents our reactions, our heart, or our emotions. In that little person on top, that rider, that represents our brain, or our logical thinking, or our response. Now, if that little person on top has no idea what they're doing, if they have no training, which way do you think that elephant's going to go? Whichever way it wants to go. But if that person on top knows what they're doing, if they have the skill and the training, they can keep that elephant on the same path where they want to go. So I'm going to give you all a test. And obviously, I'm sure you came prepared for this, but don't worry. It's not that hard. It's just you got to get 70% to pass. Okay? So I'm going to flip a slide here coming up. And what you have to do, I'll give you the specific directions, but it kind of reads like an eye chart. You're going to go from left to right, top to bottom, but you have to say your answers loud and proud, okay? I'm sure everybody, I know I can't see you, but you're nodding your head north and south, okay? So here are your instructions. State the color of the words. Okay. Stop. What happened? I would imagine you started reading the word. Why? Because that's our conditioned reaction. That's what we're used to doing. And you need to override that reaction. You need to exercise what's known as cognitive discipline to follow instructions. And one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received came from a former colleague of mine in the Air Force. And he's a former fighter pilot. And he asked me one time, he said, what's one of the first things you think they teach us in fighter pilot training when an alarm goes off in the cockpit? I said, I don't know. You probably, you start pushing a bunch of buttons. You hop on the radio and you say, Mayday. Maybe even you eject out of there. He said, the very first thing they teach us to do is to wind the clock, because you can't break anything by winding the clock. And it's making your brain take that brief pause and override those instant reactions and letting your brain trigger more of a thought out response instead. And I've taken that advice and it's helped me in all facets of my life, especially my marriage. My wife and I are disagreeing about something and I just want to say something, but I know it's only going to make it worse. It's just going to dump some fuel on that fire. I remind myself, okay, this is a wind the clock moment. I'm literally doing this. She knows now. She's caught on. But it's me taking a breath, taking a step back, and then re-engaging. Now, the good news is here we can fail as much as we want. Nothing's going to happen to us. We're going to keep all our fingers and toes. But you all are smart people. The real consequences are when you all go back to work. And the challenge is on you to take what I'm going to talk about and start applying it to not only help you be more effective leaders, but also to help you and those around you be safer. And thankfully, I was able to manage my reaction, and I went on to work for an entire season with the Vikings, working in football operations. This is my dream job, my hometown team. And my job involved working directly with the players and coaches, making sure they had everything they needed off the field in order to be successful on the field. I booked flights, hotels, catered meals, passed out their fan mail, their pay stubs, gave them rides, you name it, I did it. And I was very thankful for my short time at the Vikings, but it did not take me long to realize that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And all of those experiences really have led me to being here with all of you today. And the challenges I face, despite being very different in appearance to what you might be facing, the foundational elements are still the same. A strong safety culture has to be proactive and live the values of safety leadership on a daily basis. So let me ask you this. For the next 24 hours, could your organization, your company go 100% incident free? Of course. You have many days like that. The research shows that 99% of all incidents are completely preventable, save those lone acts of God that are out of our control. But preventable incidents are still happening. I want you to hop on the chat quick. Give me some reasons. Why do incidents still happen? Let me see. Make sure I pull up my chat. So why are we still having incidents? Complacency, Rachel says. What else? There's no points off for spelling, so don't worry. Complacency was a big one that I had to deal with while I was in Afghanistan with my soldiers, and it's something I'm going to be talking about coming up here shortly. What are some other reasons? Tiffany, skimming the directions, short attention spans, absolutely. Especially, think during all of this COVID stuff we're dealing with. Where are people's minds, right? They're coming into work. A lot of them are doing the same tasks they do every day, which have a risk to them, but their minds are thinking about, what's the next mandate coming from the governor? How are my kids doing with this distance learning? Are they actually getting something out of it? People are saying experience and knowledge and laziness. shortcuts. I'm curious, again, I can't see you, but how many of you in your career at one point or another have taken a shortcut, skimmed the directions when it comes to safety, or maybe not wearing the proper piece of PPE when it comes to safety, right? We've all done it. We've all done it. And if you've ever taken that shortcut or you're not guilty at it, you might have those lucky days. But again, go back to what I said earlier. Sooner or later, it's going to try to happen to you. And that's not something that I would want to continue to gamble with. So what do we think it's going to actually take to move the needle on safety? Is it going to be some hot new piece of PPE, or, hey, here's the newest OSHA regulation? Probably not. In my experience, it's going to be your ability to get everyone to start taking safety personal. And that's what I specialize in, because I've been fortunate to help lead some awesome companies in that area by designing and delivering this powerful safety leadership workshop that engages all participants. And I've been fortunate to see that change and the great results that not just save the company money, but more importantly, save people from getting hurt and potentially worse. And the genesis of all this started with the safety leadership program at Marathon Oil that I did. And so 2017, they had a really bad year safety-wise. And I helped facilitate a safety seminar at their corporate headquarters. They brought in leaders from all over the field to, put our heads together. Let's figure this out. And I watched as the CEO of this Fortune 500 company got up and speak about why safety mattered to him. And he just didn't get up and toe the company line and say what's expected of him because he's the CEO. He made it personal. And he told a powerful story that brought him to tears when he was first coming up in the industry. And I saw how the audience responded to that. And so from there, we designed and delivered this safety leadership course unlike any they'd ever had. This course spoke the language of those in the field that were out on that day-to-day grind. And so, we brought relevant discussions, practical tips, out of your seat exercises, really around two main pillars of service-based leadership and forward-looking accountability. Now, when I was leading troops in Afghanistan, I used to have to give briefings every time that we would leave the base, much like your toolbox talks or JSA, safety talks, tower talks, whatever you want to call them. And most of my soldiers would tune me out because they've heard the same message every single day. So I had to get creative. One thing I did was I started having my soldiers lead that briefing. I'd help them prepare the day before, and when it came time, I was standing there right next to them to throw them a lifeline, make sure everything was covered. Worst case was they were going to bomb. But regardless, it was a huge learning experience for them. And the other thing that I started to do was tell personal stories around safety. And so the cornerstone of that safety leadership workshop is something known as a safety sump speech. It's this brief yet powerful story on why safety matters to you. Follows this easy 3-part template, starting with your belief on safety, your personal story or message, and then wrapping up with what your commitment is on safety. Now, most of these workshops, the people that were in them were these frontline people, pretty intimidating people, not the most approachable. It wasn't their first rodeo when it came to mandatory safety training. So they'd come in, they put their spit bottle on the table, they cross their arms. They don't want to be there. They're only there because somebody told them they had to be. And at the beginning of every workshop, I'd share my personal safety stump speech. And then I'd tell everybody at the end of the workshop, each and every one of them is going to get up and share their own story in front of everybody. And of course, you can imagine just how excited and giddy they were, because who doesn't love being forced to stand up and speak? Of course not. They're basically shooting flaming arrows out of their eyes at me. But something pretty unbelievable happens throughout the workshop, because at the end, these people are chomping at the bit to get up and to share their story. I saw some of these pretty tough people get up, break down, sharing their story, shed tears on why safety mattered to them, and tell their colleagues, I care about you, and I want to help keep you safe. That's the stuff that people are going to remember. And it was amazing, because some of the most powerful safety stump speeches I heard had absolutely nothing to do with a direct work-related incident. I had this lady in North Dakota share a story of her teenage daughter was texting and driving. She ran a stop sign. She was T-boned. Thankfully, only some bumps and bruises. And her message was, don't let it come to the point where something hits close to home for you to change your behavior. And what made that so powerful was how personal it was. The moment someone starts saying words like my son or daughter or my husband or wife and tells a story that somebody can easily relate to, people start paying attention. And some of the most powerful stump speeches were only 45 seconds to 1 minute. There's a lot of value in being brief and to the point. But the key was being able to help participants craft that message in a succinct way. I've seen people in organizations that like to share their stories, but oftentimes what happens is they start talking in circles, start saying the same thing over and over, or they don't get to the point. And when the person they're speaking to starts to mentally check out, the message is gone and lost. And so we took this 3-hour safety leadership workshop. We rolled it out to the entire field organization at Marathon Oil, to every contractor out there. In over 2 years, they've seen a 57% reduction in their total recordable incident rate. Money saved, more importantly, lives saved. And I mentioned one of those pillars of the workshop is servant leadership, which really is placing the needs of others above your own. And that doesn't require you to be the boss. Servant leadership impacts your safety culture really in a couple different ways. And number one, it empowers employees to think creatively and outside the box when it comes to your processes, when it comes to safety, which is important because as technology continues to advance, processes change, and it's those employees who are on the floor or right on the line that they provide the best perspective. Number two, it enables workers at all levels to feel empowered to stop the job. It never fails when I go into new clients and I start asking them about stop the job. I ask, who can stop the job? Of course, they say anyone. I ask them, well, how do they know? The answer always is, well, we tell them every single day. And then I ask if they truly believe that every single employee out there feels, if they feel they would stop the job if they saw a potential risk or did not know something. And of course, the answer is no. Not everyone feels empowered to stop the job. We can tell them till we're blue in the face, but that's not enough. And one of the reasons is there's this huge misconception in a few people that stopping the job means you're hitting this big red button and you're shutting everything down. That's definitely not always the case. Stopping the job could mean taking a step back, asking a question, and jumping back into the work. Another reason that I hear often is that people think they're going to get in trouble. I was just in Texas Monday and Tuesday working with Marathon Oil again, doing an in-person socially distanced workshop, and I heard it again. People think they're going to get in trouble. And that should not, and most of the times it's definitely not the case, but there's that perpetuating thought in us as humans that if we do something wrong, we're going to get punished. And we'll dive into that coming up shortly when we talk about accountability. So what can we do in addition to reinforcing it every day in our safety, our startup meetings? Well, an important part of servant leadership really is leading by example. So I just want to get the blood flowing with y'all quick. So hopefully you're looking at me on the screen. I can't see you, but I imagine you're doing it. I just want you to follow my directions, okay? So look at me, 1 finger right here, 2, now 3. Just twirl it around right there. There you go. You're doing a good job. And you're just kind of getting the blood flowing down your arm. Now just go ahead and put it right there on your chin. Okay. Some of you put it on your cheek. I know you did, because somebody always does. Why? Because as humans, we tend to mirror the behavior of others around us, for better or for worse. If we're not doing the right thing safety-wise, if we're taking shortcuts, we're not wearing the proper PPE, how can we expect others to do the same? But the good news is it works the other way. If we're doing all that great safety leadership stuff, others will pick up on that. So one way for you to get out there, for you to get people to feel empowered to stop the job, you get out there and stop the job for no reason. You model that behavior. You show them that it's not hitting the big red button. It's not always shutting everything down. And you show them that's what you want them to do and that they're not going to get in trouble. If they don't know, you want them to do that. And you have to continue to build off that. And it might be you going up behind a new employee and telling them, hey, go ahead and stop the job. There's no reason to do so, but you're showing them that you support them. It's about modeling the behaviors, and to reinforce that, we want to make sure we recognize people for doing that. So I would imagine most of you, if I ask you this, I would rather have somebody stop the job 999 times out of 1,000 for not knowing something in order to catch that one reason that may prevent somebody from getting hurt or killed. Well, of course, Because what are those 999 other times? Those are learning opportunities, chances for us as leaders to teach and to recognize them for doing the right thing. Because if they don't know something, if they're not on the same page as everybody else, they should stop the job, get the answer, and get back to work. And the third part of how servant leadership helps build a strong safety culture is it lets others know you care about them. A key aspect of servant leadership is listening, and specifically active listening. And there's a big difference between listening and hearing. Some of you might be only hearing me right now. It's in this ear, it's out the other. I do it to my wife all the time. But active listening means you're fully engaged what the other person is saying. And you're not thinking about what you're going to say next, and that is hard. And it's a skill that's got to be developed. When you listen to others, you're able to more authentically develop relationships with them. And the research is clear on that. The more you know somebody, the more likely you are to watch out for them, to have their back, to make sure that they're safe. Now, thankfully for me, I had an awesome example of what a servant leadership is when I was in the military. And his name is John Post. He was my platoon leader, the embodiment of a servant leader. I was a young sergeant at the time. He was a young lieutenant, a few years removed from West Point. He didn't have a lot of experience. But what he lacked in that, he made up through his leadership behaviors. He was the type of guy, and I've seen him do it, he could sit you down, tell you just the 12 different ways that you sucked at life, but you'd leave that conversation with a smile on your face, ready to do anything for that man because you knew he had your best interest in mind. He wanted to see you succeed. He was going to give you everything you needed to be successful, and he cared about you. And you knew that because he told you. And another thing John did is he led from the front. He was the type of leader that would not order someone to do something that he wouldn't do. And one of the simple yet most effective ways he did this was he would get his hands dirty with us. He easily could have sat in the air-conditioned tactical operations center, but he chose to come help us when we had to do things like fill sandbags or string concertina wire or build an outfield wall for the softball league we created in the middle of nowhere near the Pakistani border. John also empowered us to think creatively and outside the box by encouraging us to make the most of our situation. We're isolated, austere conditions, surrounded by the enemy. And for myself, that included me enrolling in online college classes. Even though we're in a tough place, the fact we're working with Special Forces, Navy SEALs, allowed us to have this nice satellite that had a pretty good internet connection. But in order to complete these classes, I needed to have a certified proctor for my exam. So John paid the money out of his pocket, filled out the trove of necessary paperwork, and got certified. But he took it one big step forward. He got credentialed to actually teach us college credit level classes himself in order to help us further our education and development. And he didn't have to do that. His actions help foster a culture of what's known as a forward-looking accountability. And that's really the second pillar of the safety leadership. We often associate the word accountability with blame or, pointing the finger at somebody that did something wrong. But forward-looking accountability is about having the mindset of identifying potential problems, fixing them, and making sure it won't happen again. And I learned some pretty hard lessons about accountability when I was in the military. I was promoted to the rank of sergeant between our deployment to Iraq and our first one to Afghanistan. We were actually up in Germany training when I got promoted. So when we left Italy, all my buddies and I were the same rank. But when we came back, I was now a sergeant. And in the military, there's a very distinct line between the lower enlisted and what I now was a non-commissioned officer. But when we got back to Italy, my buddies and I wanted to go out and celebrate. And I thought we did the right thing. We had one of our buddies was a designated driver. Well, at the end of the night, we got pulled over by a random Carbonari checkpoint, the Italian police. But I wasn't worried. We had a DAD. Well, it turns out he did not have an Italian license. So we all got detained. The military police had to show up, took us back to base. This is, middle of the night, more like early morning. They had a call, wake up our commander, our first sergeant, tell him what happened. And I ended up receiving what's known as a field grade Article 15. And an Article 15 in the military is non-judicial punishment. So what that meant was I had to move back into the barracks on base from the apartment I had in the city. I was restricted to base for 45 days. I had 45 days of extra duty, which meant I was working every single day from 5 a.m. to midnight, regardless of the day, for 45 days straight. And they took a half month's pay for 2 months. Now, they also typically knock you down a rank, but my commander fought for me on my behalf to keep it. But I struggled with understanding, why did I get punished and why was mine the most severe? I wasn't driving, but that's not accountability, at least not in the military. The Army expected me to be a leader, and I failed. And in the moment, I felt like I was at rock bottom in my career. And I'll never forget how my first sergeant broke it down. He said, look, you're at a fork in the road. He'd seen some soldiers in my position have situations like this, keep them down, ruin their careers, and impact them for the rest of their lives. But he's also seen some go the other way. And he told me I could get back to doing what had made me successful. And thankfully for me, when I hit rock bottom, there was a trampoline down there. And although that really stung in the moment, it prepared me for an even more important situation when it comes to accountability. And in the summer of 2007, I found myself up here at Observation Post Warhide, a small observation post in the Nuristan province in the mountains in northeast Afghanistan. Now, I was the highest ranking person up there, and I was in charge of the 14 soldiers there. But again, it wasn't my title that made me a leader. And our mission was twofold. We served overwatch over the valley below, and we served as a retransmission station so the two bases on each side of the mountain could still communicate with each other. We had no running water. We had no hot chow, but we loved it. And let me tell you, we thought we were pretty cool up there. We cut off the sleeves of our shirt, grow our hair out, not shaven. There's nobody up there to tell us what to do. And we had this small 5K generator that would keep our batteries charged and the antenna powered up. And every once in a while, a Chinook helicopter would fly in with a 500-gallon fuel blivet sling loaded underneath, just like you see in the picture there. And we had this small, flat, but not level piece of ground where the helicopter would hover overhead. It would gently set that fuel blivet down. My soldiers would put a rock under it so it didn't roll away, chalked it off, and the helicopter would unhook, fly away, and go home. We trained for it many times. We've done it in Afghanistan many times. Daytime, nighttime, rain, snow, no different. This time I was standing up at the Tactical Operations Center, which is just a fancy word for the tent that had the radio in it. We all took shifts watching the radio. This happened to be my turn. So the helicopter comes in and hovers overhead and gently sets the fuel blivet down. My soldiers place a rock in front of it so it doesn't roll away. And the helicopter unhooks and flies away. And so that picture there is the landing zone. You can see it's flat, but it's not level. So just as my soldiers are about to hook that fuel blivet up to this 6-wheeled Gator vehicle to sort of get it back up the rest of the mountain, my soldier pulls out the rock from under it. And that thing rolled way down the mountain, burst in the open, spraying fuel. So I was going to have to hop on the radio and let them know that we needed that helicopter to fly through the dangerous valley, risking their lives, where they like to break out the big Dishka machine gun. They shoot RPGs because we lost the fuel. And if that would have been me early on in my military career, I would have hopped on that radio so fast and said, well, so-and-so pulled out the rock from under it. It's their fault. But that's not leadership. Although I failed to prevent that incident from happening, I was still able to exercise some aspects of forward-looking accountability by taking ownership of the situation. I had to examine what I could have done differently and make changes. And I was only able to do this because of leadership behaviors I had cultivated from those that came before me, like Lieutenant John Post. And I learned that in moments like that, I needed to look inside and realize there were things I could have done differently. I could have held a little pre-job planning session just to remind everybody what their role was, because it's easy to get complacent. And I didn't do that. I could have been down there supervising, knowing it's a high-risk task. Anybody could have been monitoring the radio. I wasn't special. So I hopped on the radio and I told them, look, I lost the fuel. It's my fault. Please send more. When it comes to safety at work, I oftentimes have clients say they want employees to take ownership of it. Well, in order to get there, it has to start with a strong culture of forward-looking accountability, of empowering others to not only recognize and see potential problems, but also to see their role in the challenge and help them develop solutions to prevent it from happening again. One client that I've worked with that has locations across the globe took an idea from a relatively new employee. At that person's previous job, they had this dedicated intranet page to share proven safety innovations that other locations were doing. It wasn't some earth-shattering idea, as many organizations are doing this, but this particular client wasn't. And the culture of forward-looking accountability helped this employee feel empowered to speak up and share an idea that could help improve their safety culture. We all have people that are expecting us home at the end of our shifts, right? Nobody's getting paid enough to get hurt. Now, this right here, this is my family. This is who I support. We need to make safety personal. Show your colleagues pictures of your family. Show them pictures of your dog or cat. We need it to hit home for everyone. I also share this picture because I know the current environment we're in. for lack of a much better word, it kind of sucks. In February of last year, I lost my job. My wife and I were in the middle of the adoption process, and we just went through what's known as a failed match, where we lost out on $15,000 due to a birth mother we were matched with that was trying to scam us in the agency. When I got let go from my job, I cried. I had no idea how I was going to support my family, let alone continue on this expensive adoption journey. But I did what I know best. I wiped those tears away and I got back to work. I created my next opportunity that afternoon, and it's been really hard. But thankfully, we continued on the adoption journey, and we were able to add our beautiful daughter, Haven, to our family at the end of May. She's been a huge blessing and just such a bright spot during these challenging times. I want you all to know it's okay to show weakness and to be vulnerable. We need each other to get through this, and I promise you we're going to get through this one day at a time. What I want you all to do real quickly before I get ready to wrap up is pull out your phone, and I want you to please take this short survey. So you take out your phone, if you've never done the QR code thing, you open your camera app, and you point it right at the QR code on the screen, the big black and white square. And you don't have to actually take a picture. A little dialog box will open asking to, open a website, and it takes you to the survey, and it literally takes you 90 seconds to fill out. And at the end, it'll give you the option. I have this white paper I wrote on 5 ways to ensure safety that I want to share with you. Leave your name and email address if you want it. And I'll also send you the template for the safety stump speech. I value your feedback. And so please go ahead and take that. And if anybody could just also hop on the chat and just let me know that, yes, the QR code is working for you. I checked it this morning. Everything worked great. Again, if you've never done it, you use your phone, you open the camera app, you point it right there at the screen, a little box will pop up. Thank you, Charlene, for letting me know it works. And Jolene, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Just please take 90 seconds to fill that out. And I'll stop talking to give you a little bit of time quick. And I have one more story, Lori, that I just want to share before I wrap up, just so you're tracking. So as you're finishing up, I just want to share this story with you on the power and impact that we can have on each other. My wife and I, last February, actually 2019 now, February 2019, we're coming home from church. We saw some cars backed up and stopped in front of us. Cars began to merge over as we slowly crept closer to see kind of what's going on. And a car was stopped in the middle of a lane, and it looked like there was some guy slumped over. And there's some employees from this instant oil change from across the street. They're beating on the window trying to get this guy's attention. Must have been about 6 or 7 people there. And so we slowly drive by, and I proceed home. But I didn't get far because my wife turns to me and she says, "You know what? If that was you or my dad, I want you to stop because you know what you're doing." And she was right. So I turned around, I parked, I ran out in the street. By then they had busted the back window, had gotten the guy out. He's laying on the ground. One guy was doing chest compressions, everybody else standing around. So I went up to his head and did what I was trained to do. I cleared his airway. Food and some other not nice stuff were coming up with each chest compression. So I was fish hooking that stuff out of his mouth. And I'm not sure how long we were doing CPR for, but we still didn't hear any sirens. But out of nowhere, this guy shows up with an AED. And we get it hooked up. And for those of you, which I'm sure is most of you, that's been to AED training, that walks you right through how to do it. We get it hooked up, monitors him, gives him a shock, tells us to continue CPR. Finally, the EMTs arrive. We let them take over. I get back in my car and drive home. But I couldn't stop thinking about this guy and what his status was. And so later that afternoon, I called the non-emergency line at the public safety office to see if I could learn anything, not expecting that they're going to really tell me much. But they told me, you know what, when we dropped him off at the hospital, it didn't look good. He had gone such a long time without oxygen. I couldn't detect a pulse on him. And later that evening, I find out via neighborhood Facebook page that the guy's name was Carl, and he worked at Home Depot, and he's coming back to work from his lunch break, hence the pieces of hot dog from Sonic that I was fish hooking out of his mouth. So Monday morning, I wake up and I go into Home Depot to try to find out more information. And I'm asking around, and they said, yeah, it just doesn't look very good. And I go back on Tuesday morning, same thing. Wednesday morning, same thing. And Thursday I come in, they said, Carl's sitting up in his hospital bed and he's telling jokes. They put a couple stents in, the widowmaker artery had a major clog. Well, fast forward to June of last year, and I'm in Home Depot, probably for like the third time that day, picking up things that I didn't need or I'd forgotten on my other trips. But who do you think I run into? I run into Carl. And I introduced myself and I said, Carl, the last time I saw you, you were laying in the middle of the road and I was taking pieces of food out of your throat. Now, I tell you that story because you can make a difference. I played an extremely small role and I did not save Carl's life, but I know Carl was saved by that guy that came out of nowhere with the AED. Remember, I wasn't even going to stop. And I like to think I'm a helpful person. And I'm sure many of you do as well. But that concept, that phenomenon is not new. It's actually called the diffusion of responsibility. And studies have shown over and over again, when we're in groups of people, we're less likely to lend a hand or call out a potential safety issue. Why? Because we think somebody else is going to do it. So if you take anything away from today, from our time together, I want you to remember Emmanuel and Michael and Carl. I want you to remember how my failure to speak up led to Emmanuel being killed. And I also want you to remember that guy with the AED. He could have easily passed by and assumed it was under control. He had the courage to speak up and do something. Marianne Williamson once said, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond belief. Each and every one of us have this ability to influence and inspire others. Hopefully you're leaving here inspired by what you've heard. You might even be thinking of a story that you want to share with others to help move the needle on safety. But that inspiration and story can't just live in this room. The hard part's now on you. You guys go back to work, share it with others. It's our personal and moral obligation to take care of each other. I'd love to be a resource for y'all going forward. Find me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email. I'd love to, if there's any chance to partner with you guys, I'm out here, for lack of a better word, grinding, trying to support my family. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much. Lori, thank you so much for having me. And if there's any questions, I know we're running short on time, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So thank you so much. I know I'm inspired. What I would like to ask of any of the participants today, if you have a safety story that you would like to share, just email that to safety@orrvillechamber.com, and we will, I just really would love to hear some of your stories and things that you've been inspired to think about today. So thank you for joining us. Patrick, you've been a great inspiration to all of us, and we all will take something away from this. Again, our February registration link is open, and I encourage you to go in there and get that on your calendar now, and just stay safe out there. Keep plugging away and keeping your employees safe and working, and just have a great day and a great week. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.